Greetings and welcome to the Phil Naessens Show. Man, I have an interesting program planned for you, and man, I tell you what, I was looking at the website today and I saw all these downloads from all over the world, and I'm excited. Man, we are getting a lot of hits, a lot of listens, and some great feedback from last week. But I gotta tell you, what about those St. Louis Cardinals? How about those St. Louis Cardinals? I'll tell you what, in my opinion, this was the best, or one of the best, World Series of all time. I mean, you had it all. You had the Texas Rangers, who, bottom line, they are the best baseball team in the American League. And then you had the Cardinals, the St. Louis Cardinals. Boy, what a Cinderella season they had. 10.5 games out on August 25th. They get into the playoffs on the last day of the season. They knock off the Phillies, who everyone predicted to be the World Series champions. Then they shot over to Milwaukee and beat the Milwaukee Brewers, a team I really, really liked. And then this amazing World Series, 7 games, kept you on your seat the entire series. You never knew what to expect. Never knew what to expect. But I got to tell you, the Cardiac Cardinals, man, they made what seemed to be an otherwise very boring baseball season exciting. They really made it exciting, didn't they? That dramatic finish to win the wild card, you're not going to see that too often. Not too often you're going to see that. But the Cardinals came through. They absolutely came through. And who would have predicted anything like this kind of finish in September? Other than me, of course. But I was just going out on a limb, because that's what we do here. We want to see great baseball. And the St. Louis Cardinals provided great, dramatic baseball for 2 months out of the year. You can't ask for more than that. You just can't ask for more than that. But the way they caught the Braves, goodness gracious, 10.5 games out. It's Cinderella time. That's the time when you make your fishing plans and your hunting plans. The season's over. The season is over for you. And yet you come back and you end up in the playoffs. And you got to thank the Atlanta Braves a little bit for falling apart the way they did, but St. Louis won baseball games. They were the hottest team coming out there in the playoffs, and they demonstrated it, didn't they? Incredible, huh? But the way they beat the Phillies in the National League Divisional Series playoff games, beat them in 5, and that was a great series. A lot of people said, hey, St. Louis's run is over. It's just over. They're not going to defeat this mighty pitching staff and this great offense. And, not many people would have thought that would happen. Not really. We predicted here that they would win in Game 5. But I wasn't so sure they were going to beat the Phillies. I mean, I thought the Phillies were pretty tough. But I predicted the Cardinals anyway because, quite frankly, I just was blown away by these guys who came back from out of nowhere. And you had to believe. When you see these guys play, you had to believe. When they would win games in the bottom of the ninth and the way they would throw their helmets down and the way they looked at each other, you could see that these guys were starting to believe with each and every game. And after that Philadelphia Phillies series, those guys were on fire. And then they had to cruise into Milwaukee and deal with Prince Fielder, and they had to deal with some other fellas. And it wasn't a lot of fun for them. But they got through in 6 games, didn't they? Just got through, and that's the way it's supposed to be in Major League Baseball. If you're a great team, you play like a great team. And that's what they did. And they got to the World Series, an unlikely World Series. And you read around the blogosphere and these Cardinal blogs, some of them anyway, were like, wow, we got here, and that's enough. And I'm thinking, no way. I said, no way. There's no way that they're going to lose now. No way. They really believe in themselves now. And I had made that silly prediction that they would win in 6. And then they did. But they won in 7. And I remember on last week's show, while we were watching Game 6 during this show, I said, you got to believe it's going 7, baby. And those pesky Texas Rangers, every single time the Cardinals would pull back and tie the game, the Cardinals would come back and score another run. That's the sign of a great baseball team. You know, they didn't lose the World Series. They were beaten. And Texas, my goodness, what a lineup these guys have. And Josh Hamilton, you know, I kind of bagged on him a little bit. Kind of wondered what happened to him. He came alive in Game 6 and Game 7. That's what great baseball players do. And I got to tell you, though, when David Freese hit that run-scoring double, I believe, in the bottom of the 9th, and then hit that dinger leading off the bottom of the 11th, when he rounded third base and he threw his helmet down, that series was over. There's no question that series was over. If you go back and you look at those highlights and you look at the faces on his Cardinal teammates when he was waiting, they were waiting for him to get to the home plate. It was no more like, what happened? They believed then, and that World Series was over. I don't care what anyone says. That World Series was finito. Right there. Done and dusted. There's no way that Texas was going to win Game 7. No way. And that's when people started to believe, and they started to write a little differently. You know, they started to encourage the team more. Hey, let's look at it this way. If we do lose, by golly, this is a better team than we thought it was. This is a team we should be proud of. And that was a great thing to see. But it was incredible, huh? What an incredible series that was. Man, I've watched now 3 of the games. I listened to most of them. But what a fantastic World Series. And you know what made it great is Friday night. The kids could watch. You know, these games are all in the evening. You know, there's school to deal with. And they got to watch Game 7 of the World Series. Any kid who wanted to. School wasn't in a way on Saturday morning. And they were treated to a pretty good baseball game. 6-2 final, but it was a pretty good baseball game. But what you saw was an old veteran, Chris Carpenter, take the ball after just 3 days rest. That's old school, baby. They don't do that anymore. But 3 days rest, takes the hill, and does his job. You know, there's no pitch count. That's what Tony La Russa said. There's no pitch count. He's going to stay out there because that kid's going fishing. That kid's going fishing on Saturday. He's got 5 months to recover. He'll be all right. And Chris Carpenter, the Bulldog, came through. This is a fantastic baseball player, huh? Chris Carpenter. And what about David Freese? He's the MVP of the World Series, but more importantly, this is a hometown kid. You know, he dreamed about this moment his entire life. Every guy that's playing baseball today is dreaming about being the MVP in the World Series. Every one of them dream of that and winning the World Series. And if you have the luck and the opportunity to live in a baseball town, then that's your dream, is to hit that dinger for your team, to win for your city, to win the World Championship for your city. And that's what David Freese did. But like I said, man, when he came round in third, this guy believed. He did it all for them, didn't he? He wasn't alone. Albert Pujols, 3 dingers in, I believe it was Game 2 or Game 3? Big night on the town for Albert Pujols. And you got Rafael Furcal. That's his first World Series win. But goodness gracious, David Freese, wow, you're the hometown hero. Your dreams came true. I wonder if he had goosebumps after he hit that dinger in the bottom of the 11th. And I wonder throughout the next night on Friday night in Game 7, I wonder how many of these guys had goosebumps around the 5th inning on when they knew that something special was about to happen. Because I can tell you that I did. I was doing my other show, and I said, wow, and my co-host is telling me about this series, and he's giving me the scores, and I got this other person on Facebook letting me know what's happening because they know I'm doing a program. And I started to get goosebumps. I said, yeah, baby. I didn't want to come on the show here and say, oh, well, you know what, whatever. I wanted to come out there and say, the St. Louis Cardinals are the World Series champions for 2011. The unlikely hero. That's going to tell everyone else in the American League and the National League that things can happen if you just believe. And then, of course, you know what? Tony La Russa, I like Tony La Russa, always have, always will. He has retired. I don't know if he's going to manage another team or if he's just going to go fishing. But he's going to go down as one of the greatest baseball managers of all time. He has to. He's number 3 on the all-time wins list. He's been around for a long, long time. And he's seen it all, and he's done it all. He's got 3 World Series championships to his credit. And you know what? I know that the fans in St. Louis, they kind of looked at him sideways a lot of times. And I know he took a lot of heat, and he made a lot of you fans crazy. But, boy, you have to be honest with yourself and say, who else would you rather have manage that baseball team other than Tony La Russa? He was like a chess grandmaster. I mean, he made a lot of moves. They had that little blunder out there in the bullpen, but he made all the right moves from Labor Day on. And your St. Louis Cardinals are world champions because of the smart grandmaster style managing of Tony La Russa. Who's going to forget the guys or pitchers hit 8, batting your pitcher 8th. He did that over 400 times. I mean, whoever heard of that? But he had a plan. It didn't always look right. Sometimes it just didn't work. But he is, without a doubt, one of the greatest baseball men of all time. Has to be. I truly believe that. Truly believe that. And then, we have a couple of questions. Who's going to be the manager for the St. Louis Cardinals? I mean, that's a type of job anyone would want to have. They're the defending champions. Of course, it comes with a lot of pressure. I'm thinking there's going to be a first baseman, a former first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals going to get that job. Now, who could it be? I bet you're thinking Big Mac, right? Well, I'm thinking about someone else, someone who is in the announcer's booth for the New York Mets. I think Keith Hernandez would make a great baseball manager. I don't know if he'd take the job, but I think Keith Hernandez would make a fantastic baseball manager. And then there's talk. Albert Pujols is a free agent. And over the next few weeks, we're going to get into the Hot Stove League. We're going to keep you up to date on all the baseball. But Pujols is now a free agent. He's spent pretty much his entire career in St. Louis. He's only played for one manager. What's he going to do? Well, the smart money says he stays in St. Louis because, believe it or not, he's an icon now, and he's only going to get larger than life as his career progresses if he stays in St. Louis. That's my bet. I think he's going to stay put. He's got a chance to win another World Series with his team. This team's pretty much still intact. They're not a bunch of old guys. They can still play a little bit. They've got a couple more years left in them. We'll see what happens. But then there's talk about him becoming the player manager, and I think that would be a big mistake. I don't think that he's going to manage very much, if at all. I think there's a communication problem there. But bottom line is he needs to concentrate on playing first base. I don't think he wants to have the headaches of being the player manager. But you never know. But we're going to keep you up to date on all the free agents and who they sign with in future episodes, so stay tuned. Stay tuned, and congratulations to the 2011 World Series champions, the St. Louis Cardinals. And last week, you know what? We talked about Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow. What's his deal? What is Tim Tebow's deal? Tim Tebow did what we thought he would do. He played against the Detroit Lions, and it didn't come out so good. In fact, it didn't come out very good at all. He got sacked 7 times. That's not good. He threw for a touchdown, though. And he also, I believe, threw for an interception. It was 18 for 39 for 172 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. And I believe he carried the ball 10 times for 63 yards, no touchdowns, but he had an 18-yard run. That's what he's going to have to do. It's more like run Joe run, because playing for the Denver Broncos is no picnic for anyone. I don't care who it is. I think Eric Garcia last week, he said it best. He said, you know what, they have a terrible offensive line, and I doubt that any quarterback is going to succeed with that team because they just are awful. I think Tim Tebow's in a bad situation. I don't think he's as good as what people want to believe that he is, nor do I think he's as bad as some people say. You know, he's doing his best. He's got a bad team to play behind. He has no blockers at all, and he's running for his life back there. You can see that he's rushing throws, and when he does that, he throws the ball all over the place. He's all over the map. And I don't think things are going to change much for him. That's what I see. I don't think things will change much for him. I think he's going to stay that way. You know, I said on my other blog this week that, you know what, he's a mediocre quarterback playing on a mediocre team, and I stand behind that. You know, this guy is going to be a backup quarterback for years. As long as he stays healthy and he shows some type of ability, someone is always going to give him an opportunity because, quite frankly, they would rather have, they being NFL football head coaches and general managers, would rather have a backup quarterback who actually has some NFL experience than to put some rookie in who has none. I think that Tim Tebow's just in a bad situation. I don't ever see him being a star in the NFL. I don't care what anyone says. I don't think he has the tools to do it. And as long as he stays with Denver, he never will, because I'm going to tell you flat out it's going to take years to fix those issues being his offensive line. Quarterbacks are only as good as their offensive line allows them to be. There can be no other choice. You just have to deal with what you deal with. He's stuck back there. He isn't any better than the other guy. Who knows what's going to happen with Tim Tebow. And we're going to continue to watch Tim Tebow every week. We're going to let you know how he does. If he's still the starting quarterback on Sunday, I don't know what happened there. I haven't seen anything to state otherwise. So it looks like Tim Tebow will be the starting quarterback again this Sunday. I don't know how he's going to fare. You know, the stats here, 18 out of 39 is not good. He did run the ball a little bit. This is the type of thing he did with Florida, really. You know, you can't expect much more than that. And Florida had a better offensive line. I don't know. You know what? He's going to have a tough job. We just hope that he doesn't get mangled too much. You know, sometimes he looks scared back there. I don't blame him. You know what? If you've got 300-pound gorillas that run like reindeer chasing after you, trying to knock your bonnet off, I think it would scare most of the armchair critics as well. That's what I think anyway. Tim Tebow, wow, he's in trouble. He's going to get hooted on. If he doesn't do anything this week, he is going to get absolutely crucified in the morning papers and on the blogosphere and everywhere else for that matter. All right, you know what? One of the things that we get around here quite a bit is our questions. And the question I was asked this week is as follows. Dear Phil, I'm starting to see why you say the things you say about women's professional tennis. My question is, Caroline Wozniacki is the WTA world number 1 and has been for some time. How can this be when she hasn't ever won a Grand Slam and for that matter has only been in one Grand Slam final, and that was in 2009? You know what? That's a very, very good question. And what we're going to do now is we're going to pull up some things. You know what? I can tell you that what I don't understand about this entire mess is why everyone's cracking on Miss Wozniacki. All she's really doing, my friends, is playing by the rules and taking advantage of the system. A system which allows her to rack up points without having to win majors. That's what she does. She racks up points without having to win majors. It is kind of strange in a way, but that's what they do, you know. I don't think she set out to do this on purpose. I don't think that she tanks Grand Slams, but the simple fact remains is that something has to be done about these things. Something needs to be done. one of the things, one of the issues that people had with her is that she's number one in the world, and, well, she hasn't won a major. And the thing is with her, is she's not alone in that. Kim Clijsters in August of 2003 was number one in the world without winning a major. Soon followed Amalie Mauresmo in 2004. Jelena Jankovic in August of 2008. Dinara Safina in 2009. And now Caroline Wozniacki in 2010. 5 players in the history of the WTA who became number one without winning majors. In the ATP and their men's counterparts, on the men's side of things, there's only been 2. Only 2. Yvonne Lendl in, I believe it was 1984, and Marcelo Rios. Yvonne Lendl went on to win multiple Grand Slams and, well, deserved being number one. He backed it up. Marcelo Rios didn't do that, and, well, he was only number one for a few weeks. It is what it is. But on the women's side, Kim Clijsters has won a couple majors now. Her first major was in 2005. She's won 4 of them. So she's a multiple Grand Slam winner. That's a good thing. Amalie Mauresmo in 2006, she won the Australian Open. She ended up winning 2 majors. So, okay, we can cut those 2 a little bit of slack. Jankovic has not won a major. It's doubtful that she ever will. Dinara Safina is probably going to leave professional tennis without winning a major. And Caroline Wozniacki is another player who has not won a major as to date. But yet she's been number one for 52 straight weeks, or nearly 52 straight weeks. It's a long time to be number one without winning a major. Now throw in the fact that she has not won or even gotten into a Grand Slam final since 2009. But here's the thing. Here's the deal. She's only playing by the rules. That's the things that you need to change. A Grand Slam singles win is worth 2,000 points. If you lose in the finals, it's worth 1,400 points. The semis, it's 900. Quarters is 500, and it goes right on down to 5 points in a round of 128. So if you make it to a Grand Slam final, based on what the WTA states, you will receive 5 points. Or a Grand Slam tennis tournament, you will receive 5 points. Now how this works, and this is straight from the WTA website, the WTA rankings are based on a 52-week cumulative system. A player's ranking is determined by her results at a maximum of 16 tournaments for singles and 11 for doubles. The tournaments that count towards a player's ranking are those that yield the highest ranking points during the rolling 52-week period. They must include points from the Grand Slams, Premier Mandatory Tournaments, and the WTA Championships. For top 20 players, their best 2 results at Premier 5 tournaments, and those are held in Dubai, Rome, Cincinnati, Montreal, Toronto, and Tokyo, will also count. In order to appear on the WTA rankings, players must earn ranking points in at least 3 tournaments, or at least a minimum of 10 singles ranking points or 10 doubles ranking points in 1 or more tournaments. So here's the deal. You have to keep your Grand Slam results. And then what you have to do is you have to keep your Premier 5 tournaments, or the Premier Mandatory Tournaments, and the WTA Championships. So if you tank at any one of those matches, that's going to count on your tournament record on the 16 best scores. Now here's the deal. Here's how it works. As I told you before, the singles, a winner at a Grand Slam in singles receives 2,000 points. Now a Premier Mandatory Tournament, a winner receives 1,000 points. At a Premier 5, the winner receives 900 points. That's where the rubber meets the road. You see, what has happened here is that Caroline Wozniacki, Well, she's gotten to a couple of semifinals this year. Where she's excelled is at the Premier Mandatory matches, and where she's excelled is at the Premier 5 Premier 5 tennis tournaments. And she only has to count 2 of those. Now, when she wins them both, that's all she needs to do. That's why she's number 1. It has nothing to do with winning majors. And that's a shame. Because quite frankly, what happens is it takes away their motivation to win majors. They don't need to. Caroline Wozniacki doesn't need to win majors. She just doesn't. All she needs to do to remain number 1 for a long time to come would be to just maintain what she's doing now. And that seems to be pretty good for her. That's how she became number 1. She didn't become number 1 by winning big matches. She became number 1 by winning matches in Dubai and down in Key Biscayne. That's where she gets her points. And then she wins points in other places like the Family Circle, which is a Premier 5 tournament. So you see, that's how she's done it. Now, why she's allowed to do it is anyone's guess. It's not a very good scene. It's not a good scenario, is it? I mean, shouldn't your number 1 player in the world be out there contending for Grand Slam finals? And don't you want to see your champion, your number 1 player in the world in the final? I know the tournament directors do. I know most of the fans do. Caroline Wozniacki's not there yet, is she? But that doesn't mean she won't be at some point. But the WTA is a mess because of this system. It needs to be changed. There needs to be even greater emphasis placed on the point system and in the Grand Slams. They need to double that. That's what they need to do. Or maybe do it in a third and make it worth 3,000 points. Because quite frankly, there's no way to catch this girl if they don't. It's going to take a lot of effort to catch this girl. Because quite frankly, she's mastered the system. She's beaten the system. Daenerys Safina the same. You know, it's bad when you're world number 1 for almost a year. Doesn't even get to finals of Grand Slams. Shouldn't you expect that? I mean, she didn't even compete against Serena Williams. She didn't compete in Australia. She got to another semifinal. Before that, and she's laid down at Wimbledon and at the French Open. What's happened to her is this. It doesn't matter. Those Grand Slams don't matter. You know, her quote after the U.S. Open said it all. She goes, I don't really care. I'm number 1 in the world, and I know what I am. Serena Williams is a great player, but I'm still number 1. Well, you know, that's a lot of bravado, considering the fact that she just got spanked by Serena. She didn't do that much better at the World Championships this last week. Hard to say. You know, I think they need to change those rules. But that's why Caroline Wozniacki's number 1 in the world. She doesn't have to go out and compete in Grand Slams. She's mastered the system, so to speak, to the point where she can do whatever it is she needs to do. And that's the deal. And that's why I don't like women's tennis anymore. I can't even watch it. I didn't watch hardly anything of the WTA finals, and I doubt I will until they change the system. Because I want to see the number 1 player in the world contending for a Grand Slam final on the final day. I don't want to see the world number 1 in a commercial laying in a recliner on the baseline. I don't want to see her talking to chair umpires from a Turkish Airlines airplane seat, reclining back and taking it easy. I want to see the number 1 player in the world playing tennis in a final of a Grand Slam. And the last 2 women who've been, or last 3 actually, who've been number 1, have not been able to do that. Have not been able to do that. And that's why I can't watch the WTA any longer. I just can't get into it. You know, I wish them well. I don't hate them. I don't hate Caroline Wozniacki. Quite frankly, I don't know the girl. Bottom line is this. She needs to win a major or stop pretending to be the number 1 player in the world. Okay, she's number 1 on paper, but on the tennis court, she's hardly the number 1 in my eyes, at least, and then probably in a lot of fans' eyes. But again, that's why I don't like women's tennis, because of this system. The men's system is pretty similar to it, but the difference is you see the number one player in the world playing on that final day in most cases. In the men's side of things, you have guys, the top 4 guys in the world have separated themselves from everyone else. And they are out there playing in finals. And they're playing in the semifinals in just about every case this year. The top 4 seeds got to the semifinals or better. That's incredible. And that's why it's interesting to watch, at least. The women, you had 4 different Grand Slam champions. And while variety is a beautiful thing, where are these girls in the rankings? You see, they don't get it done. Their whole goal is to win a Grand Slam. Caroline Wozniacki's goal seems to be number 1. And the guys, it's a different issue. They don't look at anyone who hasn't won a major as the number 1 player. They don't consider him the number 1 player. They don't treat him like the number 1 player. They treat him like the paper champion that they would be. I remember Marcelo Rios getting hammered for that very thing. Lendl, not so much, because they knew Lendl was on his way. But Rios took a beating, especially from guys like Agassi and Sampras, who say, who is this guy? This guy's a paper champ. And that's what needs to be said out there on the women's. You guys, if you want to be number 1, you look like you're going to have to knock her off her rocker at one of these premier mandatories or one of these premier finals where she eats it up. That's what you're going to have to do to dethrone Miss Wozniacki. Boy, what a show, huh? Wow. But that's why. That's why I don't like women's tennis. That's why I don't talk about it too much. Hopefully next week we're going to be talking about the Hot Stove League. We call it the hot stove because that's what happens during the winter. We talk about baseball, and we talk about free agents, and we talk about the upcoming season, and we're going to be doing that next week. Until then, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Phil Naessens Show, proudly sponsored by Swag, Textile and Screen. With Swag, you cannot go wrong. Believe me, they've been doing my clothes for years, and they'll do yours too. You can find them in the links to the program notes. And one other note, we are now on YouTube as well. So if you can't get over to my site or can't download the show for some reason, cruise on over to YouTube and check us out there. Until next week, thanks for listening.